Today, standing here while being handcuffed, I look back and think about our happy memories we made, the girl I loved staring back at me. Never in my wildest dream did I think of you so betraying me. Just to earn some money, you sold me the person who loved you, who would die for you. The person who would kill for you, he said with such hatred in his eyes. The person who never said a word to me is now yelling at me, Ari, seeing his disheveled appearance. It was weirdly calming. I have never seen Giovanni so frustrated and helpless, but this was supposed to happen soon, as I turned my head from the scene and entered the car that was waiting for me. I see Giovanni for the last time and move towards the life that was waiting for me. 6 months before, the city pulsed with a rhythm all its own, a beat that echoed in the dark alleyways, whispered through the high-rise buildings, and lingered in the dimly lit corners where secrets thrived. In this city, where power was measured in fear and loyalty was bought with blood, Giovanni Russo reigned supreme. A name that struck fear into the hearts of many, Giovanni was not just a man, he was a legend. A mafia boss with an iron grip on the city's underworld. His word was law, and his wrath was something even the bravest dared not invoke. Yet, amidst the cold, calculated cruelty that defined his world, Giovanni had one weakness, one that could shatter his empire and bring him to his knees. Her name was Isabella Ferrara, a name that would one day grace the front page of every newspaper. But for now, she was simply Bella, the woman who had ensnared the heart of a man who was believed to have none. Bella was a journalist, relentless and unyielding in her pursuit of truth. She was everything Giovanni was not, idealistic, hopeful, and honest. She lived for the thrill of uncovering stories that could change the world, and in her hands, a pen was as powerful as any weapon Giovanni had ever wielded. She was fire in a world of shadows, and Giovanni had been drawn to her like a moth to a flame, knowing full well the danger that lay in that irresistible pull. Their love was a dangerous game, one where every whispered word, every stolen glance was a risk. For Giovanni, revealing his true self to Bella was a gamble, a crack in the armor he had spent years perfecting. For Bella, it was an equally perilous affair, one that teetered on the edge of betrayal, not just of her morals, but of the very essence of who she was. She was fire in a world of shadows, and Giovanni had been drawn to her like a moth to a flame, knowing full well the danger that lay in that irresistible pull. But in a world where loyalty was everything, they had chosen to defy the odds. Night after night, they met in secret, hidden away from the prying eyes of both Giovanni's enemies and Bella's colleagues. Their meetings were brief but intense, each one a reminder of the fine line they walked, the line between love and duty, between passion and peril. And so, the city slept on, unaware of the ticking time bomb nestled within its heart, a love story that could either end in redemption or complete in utter destruction. Giovanni sat in the back corner of the dimly lit bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The bar was one of his establishments, a place where his men gathered to discuss business, where deals were made and broken. But tonight, Giovanni was not here for business. He was here for her. The door to the bar swung open, and in she walked, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders, her eyes scanning the room with a mix of caution and determination. Bella. She spotted him and made her way over, her every step filled with the kind of confidence that had first drawn him to her. She slid into the booth across from him, her eyes locking onto his. "Giovanni," she said softly, her voice a contrast to the noise of the bar around them. "Bella," he replied, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." "And yet here I am," she said, a slight smile playing on her lips. "You said it was important." "It is," Giovanni said, his expression serious. "We can't keep doing this. It's too dangerous." Bella leaned back, her gaze never leaving his. "Since when did you start worrying about danger?" "Since I met you," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. "I can't protect you if you're too close." Bella sighed, her smile fading. "You're the one who keeps pulling me in, Giovanni. You can't have it both ways." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But Bella, you're getting too close. People are starting to ask questions." "And what about you?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "You're the one with everything to lose." Giovanni looked at her, his heart clenching at the sight of the worry in her eyes. "I don't care about that," he said, his voice softening. "I care about you." Bella reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Then let me do what I do best, Giovanni. Let me get to the bottom of this. I can help you." "No," Giovanni said firmly, pulling his hand away. "This isn't your fight. It's mine." "And what happens when you lose?" Bella shot back. "What happens to us then?" Giovanni fell silent, unable to answer her. The truth was, he didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't bear the thought of losing her, but he couldn't let her get too close either. "We need to stop seeing each other," he finally said, the words painful to say. Bella stared at him, shock and hurt flashing across her face. "You're breaking up with me?" Giovanni looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "It's for your own good." "Don't you dare decide what's good for me, Giovanni Russo," Bella said, her voice shaking with anger. "You don't get to make that choice." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't let you get hurt." Bella stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You know what, Giovanni? Maybe you're right. Maybe this was a mistake." She turned and walked away, leaving Giovanni alone in the booth, his heart heavy with regret. Days turned into weeks, and Giovanni threw himself into his work, trying to forget the woman who had somehow managed to get under his skin. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her latest story, about the way her lips curled into a smile that made his heart skip a beat. Meanwhile, Bella buried herself in her work as well, determined to uncover the truth about the city's most powerful crime syndicate. She knew she was playing with fire, but she couldn't stop herself. The more she dug, the more she realized just how deep the corruption ran, and the more she realized how much she was in over her head. Then one night, as she was walking home, she felt a pair of eyes on her. She turned around, but the street was empty. Still, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest. Just as she reached her apartment building, a hand grabbed her arm, pulling her into the shadows. She gasped, but a familiar voice hushed her. "Bella, it's me." She looked up to see Giovanni, his face etched with worry. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, glancing around to make sure no one had seen them. "You're in danger," he said, his grip tightening on her arm. "You've been asking too many questions, Bella. They know who you are." Bella's eyes widened in fear. "Who knows?" "My rivals," Giovanni said, his voice tense. "They don't take kindly to journalists poking around where they don't belong." Bella swallowed hard, her mind racing. What do I do? "You come with me," Giovanni said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I'll keep you safe." Bella hesitated, her journalistic instincts warring with her fear. "I can't just disappear, Giovanni. People will wonder what happened to me." "I don't care," he said, his voice hard. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why do you care so much? Didn't you break up with me a few days ago? And now you are saying you care about me?" Giovanni looked at her, his eyes filled with an emotion she had never seen before. "Because I can't stop loving you, Bella. I can't stop caring about you." Her throat congealed with breath. It was even more intense after hearing him speak the words. Giovanni never said "I love you." He always said "I cared for you," and this made Bella want to stay more with him. "I know it's not easy, Bella, but if you stay here, they will kill you." Bella took a deep breath and said, "This is not your fault, Giovanni. I am responsible for digging up the information. You don't have to go out of your way for me." "But they are my rivals, and you don't know what they are capable of doing. They will break you in the worst possible way. I will protect you from them." Bella looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, but all she saw was determination. "Okay," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll go with you. But I have one condition. You and I are not breaking up. You will come to me as soon as the situation cools down." Giovanni nodded and smiled at her. "Of course I can't live without you now, Bella." Bella felt a warm flood of relief after hearing this. "But we need to leave now." He led her to a black car parked in the shadows, his hand never leaving hers. As they drove away, Bella couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding.
She knew she was about to enter a world she'd only glimpsed from the outside, a world where the rules were different and the stakes were life and death. But as she glanced over at Giovanni, she realized she didn't care. She loved him, and if this was the price she had to pay, then so be it. She will say bye to the life she worked for so that she can live with the person she loves. Giovanni took Bella to a safe house on the outskirts of the city, a place where they could lay low until things calmed down. It was a small, unassuming cottage surrounded by trees far away from the prying eyes of the city. For a few days, they lived in that safe house as preparations for sending Bella to another country were being made. Giovanni spent his days making phone calls, trying to find a way out of the mess they were in, while Bella spent her time writing in a journal, trying to make sense of her feelings, but they still got to spend a lot of time together. They shared every small thing that happened in their lives, and their bond grew stronger. One night, as they sat by the fire, Bella asked Giovanni, "Why are you risking your life for me?" Bella asked, breaking the silence. "Why did you fall for me?" Giovanni looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I told you, Bella. I love you." Bella shook her head. "But why? I'm just a journalist." "You're a mafia boss," Giovanni finished for her. "I know, but you're more than just a journalist, Bella. You're smart and brave, and you make me feel things I haven't felt in a long time." Bella felt her heart swell at his words. "I love you too, Giovanni, but this is crazy." "I know," he said, his voice softening. "But I can't let you go. I am ready to leave my empire to be with you." Bella looked into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand and kissed his hand that was rough and calloused. Giovanni's eyes darkened with desire, and in an instant, he was pulling her into his arms, his lips crashing down on hers. The kiss was desperate, fueled by the fear and uncertainty that had been building between them for weeks. As they pulled away, breathless, Giovanni rested his forehead against hers. "Everything's going to be fine, Bella. I promise." But even as he said the words, he knew it wouldn't be that simple. The life he led was not one that allowed for love, especially not with someone like Bella. But for the first time in his life, he was willing to risk everything for the chance to be with her. The next morning, as they sat in the kitchen, the sound of tires crunching on gravel reached their ears. Giovanni's expression immediately hardened, and he got up, grabbing his gun from the counter. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. Bella watched as he disappeared out the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew something was wrong. The tension in the air was thick, and every instinct she had told her to run, but she couldn't bring herself to move. Suddenly, the sound of gunshots rang out, and Bella's blood ran cold. She ran to the window, her hands trembling as she pulled back the curtain just enough to see outside. Giovanni was standing in the driveway, his gun drawn, facing off with two men she didn't recognize. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched the scene unfold, her mind racing. One of the men said something, and Giovanni's expression darkened. In a flash, he raised his gun and fired, hitting the man square in the chest. The second man scrambled for cover, returning fire, but Giovanni was quicker. Another shot rang out, and the second man went down. Bella let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, relief flooding her system. But the feeling was short-lived as Giovanni turned and saw her standing at the window. His expression was one of anger and concern as he quickly made his way back inside. "I told you to stay put," he said, his voice rough. "I couldn't," Bella whispered, her voice shaking. "What's happening, Giovanni?" "They found us," he said, his tone grim. "We need to leave, now." Bella nodded, fear gripping her heart. "Where will we go?" Giovanni looked at her, his expression softening for just a moment. somewhere they can't find us, but we have to move fast." They quickly packed a few essentials and left the safe house, driving away as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. Bella couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning and that their lives were about to get even more complicated. Giovanni and Bella were on the cusp of leaving the city behind, their futures intertwined as they fled the violent world that had defined them both. Giovanni had always been a man of control, a puppet master who pulled the strings behind the scenes. But with Bella by his side, he had dared to imagine a different life, one where love could triumph over the darkness that had consumed him for so long. Giovanni's main concern was to bring Bella to a safe place and then return and wrap up this mess. He knew he had many enemies, and he didn't want Bella to suffer because of him. As they stopped by a small shop to get some food, Bella was waiting inside the car as Giovanni went by to buy some snacks. Bella's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, her heart sinking as she saw the message. "We have Rose. Do as we say, or she dies." The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. Bella's younger sister, Rose, was being held hostage. She had known the risks of getting involved with Giovanni, but she had never imagined they would extend to her family. Her hands trembled as she quickly texted back, "You are lying. Rose is not here." And instantly they shared a photo of Rose tied up with ropes and gagged with a handkerchief. "What do you want?" The response came almost immediately. "Turn Giovanni over to us, expose his secrets to the media, and we'll release Rose unharmed." As Bella sat there, her mind raced with possibilities. She knew that betraying Giovanni would mean the end of their relationship, the end of the life they had planned together. But the thought of her sister suffering because of her choices was too much to bear. She looked at Giovanni, coming out of the shop, smiling at her. He sat inside the car and passed the food he bought. He glanced up at her, giving her a small, reassuring smile. Bella's heart ached with the knowledge of what she was about to do, but she had no choice. That night, Giovanni and Bella booked a small hotel room to stay. She saw Giovanni sleeping peacefully beside her. Her heart was wretched, but she couldn't risk Rose's life, and Bella made the call that would change everything. She leaked crucial information about Giovanni's operations to a trusted contact in the media, information that would inevitably lead to his arrest. Her hands shook as she sent the final message, but she knew it was the only way to save Rose. The next morning, as they prepared to leave, the sound of sirens filled the air. Giovanni's eyes widened in shock and confusion as police cars surrounded their hotel. "Bella, what's going on?" he demanded, his voice tight with panic. Before she could answer, the door was kicked open, and armed officers stormed in. Giovanni's men tried to fight back, but they were quickly overwhelmed. He took Bella's hand and tried to run from the scene, but Bella did not move. This made Giovanni look at Bella with confusion, and amidst of all this, a bullet was fired and it hit Giovanni's arm. Bella snatched her hand from Giovanni and ran behind the officers and said to them, "Arrest him." Giovanni was cuffed and forced to the ground, still not able to process that Bella sold her. "Why?" he whispered as they dragged him away. "Never in my wildest dream did I think of you betraying me. Just to earn some money, you sold me the person who loved you, who would die for you, the person who would kill for you. Never in my life have I seen Giovanni's eyes holding hatred for me. The person who never said a word to me is now yelling at me, seeing his disheveled appearance." It was weirdly calming. Even in their run, Giovanni was always composed. I have never seen Giovanni so frustrated and helpless. But this was supposed to happen soon, as I turned my head from the scene and entered the car that was waiting for me. I see Giovanni for the last time and move towards the life that was waiting for me. When she sat down in the car, tears streamed down her face as she watched the man she loved being taken from her. Knowing that she had destroyed their future to save her sister's life, she wanted Giovanni to hate him because she couldn't stop hating herself. This only happened because I entered his life. If only we never met. If only he never made me his weakness. Giovanni sat in the dark, cold cell of the maximum security prison. His mind replayed the events that had led him there over and over again. The betrayal, the arrest, the look on Bella's face as he was taken away. He had trusted her, loved her, and she had sold him out. Days turned into weeks, and Giovanni's anger festered. He had built his empire on trust and loyalty, and Bella had shattered both. The more he thought about it, the more determined he became to make her pay. It wasn't long before Giovanni's connections within the prison helped him orchestrate his escape. With the help of a few well-placed bribes and some old favors, Giovanni managed to break out, leaving a trail of chaos in his wake. The world believed him to be dead after a staged explosion, and that was exactly what he wanted. Now a free man, Giovanni set out to rebuild what had been taken from him. But this time, he would do it under a new name, a new identity. Giovanni Russo was dead. In his place, Lorenzo Bianchi was born, a man with no ties to his past, no weaknesses, no mercy. Lorenzo's rise to power was swift and brutal. He assembled a new crew, men who were loyal to him and only him. He made a name for himself in the underworld, striking deals with other crime families, expanding his influence and eliminating anyone who stood in his way. But throughout it all, one thought consumed him: revenge. Bella had returned to her life as a journalist, trying to forget the man she had betrayed. She had saved Rose, but the price she had paid weighed heavily on her conscience. She threw herself into her work, covering stories that kept her mind occupied, but Giovanni's absence was a constant ache in her heart. Then one day, Bella received an invitation to a charity gala hosted by a mysterious benefactor. She had no idea who this Lorenzo Bianchi was, but the event promised to be a star-studded affair, and she couldn't resist the opportunity to network. The night of the gala, Bella arrived in a sleek black dress, her hair elegantly styled. The venue was grand, filled with the city's elite, but as she mingled with the guests, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way people looked at her, the whispers behind her back, it all felt too familiar. Then she saw him. At the center of the room, surrounded by a group of powerful men, stood Lorenzo Bianchi. But as their eyes met, Bella felt her heart stop. It was Giovanni. He was alive. Bella's breath caught in her throat as she realized what was happening. Giovanni had faked his death, reinvented himself, and now he was back, more powerful than ever. But before she could approach him, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Bella felt a sinking feeling in her stomach as she realized that this was not a reunion. This was a reckon. Over the next few weeks, Giovanni, now Lorenzo, set out to systematically destroy Bella's life. He used his influence to discredit her as a journalist, planting false stories that tarnished her reputation. Her career, once promising, quickly fell apart as she was blacklisted by every major news outlet. Friends turned their backs on her, and she found herself alone, with no one to turn to. But the worst was yet to come. One night, as Bella was leaving her apartment, she was ambushed by a group of men. They dragged her to a secluded warehouse where Giovanni was waiting. His eyes were cold, devoid of any of the warmth she had once known. "Why?" he demanded, his voice dripping with venom. Bella trembled, her heart pounding in her chest. "Giovanni, Don't you dare call me that!" he snapped, cutting her off. "Giovanni Russo is dead. You made sure of that." Tears welled up in Bella's eyes as she looked at the man she had once loved, now unrecognizable. She tried to blink the tears away, but it only made her cry more. After a long moment of silence, "I had no choice," she whispered. "They had Rose." Giovanni's expression flickered for a moment, but then it hardened again. "And you didn't trust me enough to tell me?" "They threatened to kill her," Bella said, her voice breaking. "I couldn't take that risk." Giovanni stared at her, his mind racing. He had been so consumed with anger and betrayal that he hadn't stopped to consider why Bella had done what she did. But now, hearing her words, he felt a pang of doubt. Could it be true? Had she really been forced into betraying him? After seeing her cry, Giovanni hugged her and she sobbed harder. In between her sobs, Bella said, "This is all my fault. If I didn't become your weakness, if I didn't become the someone you wanted to protect, this wouldn't have happened. I am sorry. I am so sorry." But before he could say anything, one of his men stepped forward, grabbing his attention. He slightly pushed Bella away and stepped out of the room. Giovanni's eyes widened as the man handed him a file. The content stated the transfer of all the property and business to his name after the age of 28, and if by any chance he died, all these assets would be transferred to his father. It was weird for Giovanni because he was sure that his father earned everything himself, and why would they transfer? As Giovanni was staring at the file, he suddenly said, "Come in, Bella." Bella then stepped into the room. "I have to tell you something very important." Giovanni's eyes were hard again, but Bella didn't stumble. She paved her way in the industry by looking eye to eye. She then stood in front of him and took something off her neck. It was a small USB. "The answer to your question is in this USB," she said boldly. He took the USB from her hand and plunged it into his laptop. It contained a video and a few documents. He first opened the video. It was surveillance footage of this mansion in Italy. He then saw someone running down from the stairs, followed by a man holding a gun. "Look carefully at this person," Bella said, her eyes fixed on Giovanni. Giovanni couldn't recognize that person, as it was dark. But after a moment of silence, he said, "Dad." "No," Bella said immediately, which made Giovanni spin his head towards her. He was sure that it was his father, maybe in his early 20s. The man was trying to kill the woman in the video, as the woman was hugging something while running out of the house, but the bullet hit her ankle and she fell, and that was the end for that woman. And the thing she was holding fell out of her hands. It was a small baby. It looked like he was just born. "That's your mother, and that baby is you." This made Giovanni very angry, and he grabbed Bella by her hair and screamed at her, "My father loved my mom. He would never kill me, Mom, never hurt me or her. I am his pride and his only son. How dare you point your finger at my father?" Bella's eyes welled up, and she mustered all her strength and said, "That monster is not your father." Giovanni's grip tightened, and he growled at her and said, "Don't you dare spout any more nonsense if you wish to live. He is not your father." Bella screamed at him and freed herself from him because your father is that person. She pointed towards a person in the video who was bleeding profusely and was running down the stairs, stumbling towards the woman and the baby. Giovanni just stared at the person, how he was holding the dead woman, hugging her and crying, and his father took this opportunity and shot that person too. After the video ended, Bella opened a document. The document was a birth certificate that had his name, but the man he used to call father was not the same. Giovanni Russo, son of Antonio Russo and Bianca Russo, Bella spoke again, and she opened a family portrait. Bella slowly explained who Antonio Russo was, and the person he used to call his father is his uncle. How his uncle tried to kill him too, but couldn't kill him because if he did, all the property and business would be transferred to the charity. He could only gain all the property after the heir of the Russo Empire gains his position, and then could it be transferred to his uncle. This revelation shook Giovanni to the core. The person standing behind Giovanni, Max, questioned Bella. "How did you get this information?" She smiled slightly and said, "You are forgetting what I do for a living. Don't underestimate the power of a journalist. If they want, they could destroy an empire with little information." She then looked at Giovanni and said, "What I did while you were gone was plan how to destroy the person who tried to kill my man." Giovanni smiled at her and hugged her. The man who had raised him had been plotting against him from the start, using Bella as a pawn to bring him down. Giovanni felt the weight of the revelation hit him like a ton of bricks. His whole life had been a lie. His father wasn't his father, his empire wasn't safe, and the woman he loved had betrayed him because she had no choice. He had been so blinded by his need for revenge that he had failed to see the real enemy. His so-called father, his uncle, had orchestrated everything, from Rose's kidnapping to Bella's betrayal. It was all part of a plan to destroy Giovanni and take over the entire Mafia. With newfound clarity, Giovanni made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could take control of the present. He would fake his death again, this time for real, and build a new empire, one that was untouchable, one that would allow him to exact his revenge on the man who had betrayed him. But first, he had to deal with his uncle. Giovanni devised a plan to lure his uncle out of hiding. He spread rumors that Lorenzo Bianchi was dead, and that the explosion that had supposedly killed Giovanni had actually taken out Lorenzo. The news spread like wildfire through the underworld, and soon enough, his uncle took the bait. Believing that his nephew was finally out of the picture, Giovanni's uncle began to consolidate power, making moves to take over the entire organization. But Giovanni was ready. He had recruited a loyal group of men who were willing to follow him into the shadows, men who would help him take down his uncle once and for all. The final confrontation took place in the very mansion where Giovanni had grown up. His uncle had turned it into his headquarters, a symbol of his victory. But as he sat in his office, plotting his next move, Giovanni stormed in, flanked by his men. The look of shock on his uncle's face was priceless. "Giovanni," he stammered, rising to his feet. "Surprise, surprise," he said with a sly smile on his lips. Giovanni didn't give him a chance to speak. He crossed the room in a few quick strides, pulling out his gun and pointing it at his uncle's head. "You betrayed me," Giovanni said, his voice cold and emotionless. "You took everything from me. My family, my love, my life. But now, I'm taking it all back." His uncle sneered, his fear giving way to anger. "You think you can kill me and walk away? You'll never escape the life you were born into." But Giovanni didn't waver. He pulled the trigger, and with one final shot, his uncle's reign of terror came to an end. After pulling the trigger and seeing the man he used to call father lying lifeless on the ground, Giovanni felt weird. He felt like he committed a crime that cannot be forgiven. Giovanni fell on his knee, and a tear rolled down. He stayed there for a few moments as his men were fighting his uncle's men. After the chaos settled, he stepped outside the office and walked down the stairs, where his mother ran while holding him. He went out of the mansion as he was looking at the magnificent mansion for the last time. "Did you do what I asked you to do?" He turned, asking Max, and Max nodded his head. Giovanni then took out a lighter from his pocket and flicked it. As the sparkles escaped the lighter, he threw the lighter towards the mansion, and within a few minutes the whole mansion was covered in flames. The place he used to call home, the place that holds his childhood memories, is burning. Some memories should be burned so you can create more memories. He took one last glance at the entire place and left to meet the person with whom he would create all these new and happy memories. Giovanni returned to the city, where they found Bella waiting. She had heard about Giovanni's plan and had been praying for his safe return. When she saw him alive and well, relief washed over her. "Giovanni," she breathed, tears in her eyes. But Giovanni held her hand, stopping her. "I'm not the man you knew," he said, his voice rough. "Lorenzo Bianchi is dead, just like Giovanni Russo. From now on, I'm someone else, someone who doesn't have a past." Bella felt a pang of sadness, knowing that the man she had loved was gone, replaced by someone harder, more cynical. But she also knew that she had played a part in making him this way. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted any of this to happen." Giovanni looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I know, but we can't change what's been done. We can only move forward." Bella nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Their past was filled with pain and betrayal, but maybe, just maybe, they could build something new out of the ashes. Over the next few months, Giovanni, now operating under a new identity, began to rebuild his life. He and Bella started to reconnect, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and fear, but they both knew that they had something worth fighting for. As for Rose, she began to heal from her ordeal, with Giovanni and Bella by her side every step of the way. The three of them formed a new kind of family, one built on love and loyalty, not blood and violence. In the end, Giovanni got his revenge, but he also found redemption. He had lost everything, but he had gained something even more valuable: a second chance at life, love, and happiness. And as he looked into Bella's eyes, he knew that he would never let anything come between them again. They had survived the worst the world could throw at them, and now they were ready to face whatever came next, together.